Christian King Combs, one of the sons of rapper and music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, is facing his own scrutiny as investigators dig deeper into what exactly happened behind closed doors at Sean Combs' infamous parties. We're analyzing the allegations against Christian, some interesting responses from him as this legal development has continued, as he tries to keep his modeling and rap careers on track. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The allegations against music icon Sean Diddy Combs are having quite a ripple effect as his family members visit him in jail, or in a detention center to be more accurate. Most of his associates, employees, friends, even immediate family members are all facing questions about what they knew and when did they know it, and some are even facing their own legal action. And I say this despite the fact that these are all allegations at this point. Okay, one of those people includes Christian King Combs. This is Combs' biological son that he had with Kim Porter, who is pursuing his own rap career as well as modeling. 26-year-old is signed with IMG Models in New York. He's walked runways in places like New York, Paris, Milan. He released his debut mixtape under the name King Combs 6 years ago, and since then, he's collaborated with other big names in the rap industry, including Kodak Black, Ty Dolla $ign, Chris Brown. Since his father's arrest, though, on September 16th, Christian has not exactly kept a low profile. He continues to share videos and photos with his nearly 3 million followers on Instagram, was recently seen attending an event in support of his girlfriend's clothing line. He's also attended his father's court hearings alongside his brothers Justin and Quincy. And as we know, Sean Combs is charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution, all very serious felony charges which were filed with the Southern District of New York. Prosecutors allege that Combs was the head of a criminal enterprise that was engaged in illegal activity to satisfy Combs' apparently never-ending sexual appetite. And if convicted, Combs could spend between 15 years to life in prison. Right now, he's in the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center while he awaits trial after 2 different judges denied him bail. Combs has denied all wrongdoing. His legal team says they're not considering taking a plea deal at this time, and their client might even take the stand. His next scheduled court appearance is for a status conference on October 10th. Now, to be clear, Christian hasn't spoken publicly about the charges against his dad specifically, but he seems to have responded via his music. And we told you that Christian and his brother Justin were taken out of Combs' Los Angeles mansion when Homeland Security investigators raided the home in March. They were put into handcuffs as agents made sure everything was secured, but they weren't arrested, they weren't charged. Then in May, weeks after the raids, Christian released a new song called Pick a Side, and in it he rapped, "Police raid the crib like they think we sellin' crack, but we out here selling tracks, multi-million-dollar plaques. Knock these doors down like them Fetty boys running both our cribs. Too bad they ain't know we bought the one next door, 'cause that's the one they missed." Well, after the release, 50 Cent, another rap superstar who's had a long-standing feud with Sean Combs, posted on social media, "Now, why would you say something like this when you know the feds are investigating? Is you stupid or is you dumb? LOL." Something else adding to the drama was a post to social media by Christian's publicist Linda Luna. She wrote in part, "This Diddy controversy is truly so unfortunate. I work with his son Christian as his publicist in the music area. I've been to his parties and after parties, and I've never seen what they are claiming. I do feel like maybe he was trying to change over the past year, but it seems like it was too late and his past transgressions have come to light, and now he has to face the consequences. There are a lot of other powerful men in this industry that I've witnessed do worse, if not the same, as the allegations in this case. So anyways, God bless him and the family and the victims, as they deserve justice for what is truth in all of this." And after her comments were reported on, Luna said the post was supposed to be for friends and family on her personal Facebook page and not as an official statement. Covering all of this Combs family legal developments and allegations can be pretty heavy, so that's why I just want to take a quick minute to tell you guys about something positive. Actually, I think it's something that you're going to really love. The ability to get cash back when you buy daily essentials like gas and groceries. It's called Upside. Awesome app, free app, so easy to use. Upside gets you real cash back, money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So to give you an example, I use Upside to find a gas station. I claimed an offer. I paid with my credit card at the pump, followed the steps on the app, and I earned cash back. It was amazing. And you can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code Sidebar, and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Now, before we even get into Christian Combs' own legal scrutiny, I want to bring on a special guest, criminal defense attorney Fortunato Perri, back in this discussion here. So good to see you. Last time I think we spoke was before Sean Combs was arrested. So there's a lot going on here. Before we even get into Christian Combs and everything, we haven't had a chance to speak. Your firm famously represented Bill Cosby in a very similar kind of situation. As you saw this case progress against Sean Combs, you had the civil lawsuits, you had the raids, now you have the arrest and indictment. What are your thoughts? What are your takeaways?
Jesse, it's good to be here. Obviously it's a wide-ranging federal indictment, and going through it, it sounds like it's going to be quite a defense that they're going to have to put together here. There's no secret that in the Cosby investigations, there were multiple women who made claims of sexual assault. Some resulted in criminal charges. Some resulted in civil lawsuits. So I can see kind of some similarities here when you're seeing what's unfolding with Sean Combs.
Do you believe that there are a lot of people who are cooperating with we know that the government says that they spoke to 50 witnesses, victims, but do you think that there are a lot of high-profile people who have been speaking with the government, who might be cooperating now? One of the things we wonder is after the arrest of Sean Combs, if more people feel comfortable, safe to come forward, even though these are allegations. What do you think's been happening behind the scenes?
Well, from the sounds of the indictment, it sounds like some people have already been cooperating, whether they be high-profile individuals. I think they're going to have to make a business decision on whether or not they want to jump into the fray here, and talk about whatever involvement they may have had in some of these parties and get-togethers and things like that. Some may have no choice. Some may be subpoenaed in front of the grand jury, and then they're going to have to answer questions about whatever their involvement was. But it sounds like a lot of these people are going to have to start making some business decisions and get out front before they're going to be playing catch up.
How would you defend Combs? So he's got the charges right now of racketeering, conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. How would you defend against those charges?
Well, obviously, a lot of the prosecution is going to hinge on cooperating witnesses. So that's an opportunity for the defense to cross-examine and challenge these cooperators to see whatever criminal exposure they may have that caused them to then turn and become a cooperating witness. So that's always the first thing you look at here. But there may very well be audio and video recordings that are going to be very difficult to defend if that's part of this case. I think the first thing you do is see who's cooperating, what exposure they had initially that caused them to get involved in this investigation. I think it's kind of too early on to see exactly what needs to be done to defend him at this point.
So but we'll get to Christian Combs in a second. What I have heard from his legal team, what we're seeing so far, aside from, you put aside the idea of, say there's no racketeering conspiracy, there's no conspiracy, there's no criminal agreement, there's no criminal enterprise. You say this was all consensual. There is no sex trafficking of victim one. Assuming for a moment this is Cassandra Ventura. She was my girlfriend. Of course, I flew her from A to B. We engaged in sexual activity. Maybe we engaged in freak-offs. I called them freak-offs, but there weren't any sex workers. There was no, I wasn't threatening her. I wasn't using force to get her. I wasn't, physically attacking her to be involved in this. I wasn't, even the drug use was consensual. Again, I think his team is saying consent is going to be the main theme here. Everybody agreed to that. Is that a viable defense?
It's certainly a viable defense until you're facing 3, 4, 5, maybe a dozen people telling the same exact story. And now the jury's going to hear the same story from 12 different people. And if, and I'm just making that number up, but if 12 different people said it was not consensual, that we were drugged, that we were transported under false pretenses, that we were going to be working at some kind of a party that didn't involve these sex activities. You can do that one-on-one, maybe two or three people that come forward. But once you start getting to the numbers,
Right.
Then I think you have a problem.
All right, let's focus now on Christian Combs. So first, let me ask you, do you think it's surprising that given all this is happening, he's still quite active on social media? He's living his life normal as always?
Well, keep in mind, Jesse, that this is a civil complaint. This is not something, and I'd be curious to know whether or not this was brought to law enforcement, and if law enforcement investigated this most recent allegation.
You're talking about what I'm about to get into, the Grace O'Markey lawsuit, so we'll get into that in a second. But I hear what you're saying. This is a civil case, so he doesn't maybe feel the need to be silent, even though his father's facing criminal charges, and we don't know who else is within prosecutors' orbit. Okay,
so let me backtrack to I think your question was, should he be out there just kind of living his life and doing his thing, knowing that there's allegations against his father, that there's now going to be allegations in a civil matter with respect to him. And I think he needs to be careful, because I've represented hip hop artists in the past in criminal matters. And a lot of times we're fighting like heck to keep their lyrics out of the case, lyrics where they're admitting criminal responsibility or criminal liability or, whatever the issues we're dealing with. And we've had a fight to keep those lyrics out of the case, and sometimes you're not successful, and the jury hears what you're rapping about, what you're writing about, and that becomes a problem.
So him rapping about the raids, probably not the best thing from a legal point of view. And his publicist making those comments that I mentioned before, again, I don't know what the thought behind that was, but that couldn't have helped any situation. I don't believe so, right?
No, and it makes no sense to me why someone in that position would give that type of a statement. It just makes no sense. I mean, these guys now have some very serious, both criminal and civil issues to deal with, and I think now whoever's in their orbit needs to be careful and do the best to protect their interests under these circumstances.
The fact that only Sean Combs was arrested and criminally charged, and not anybody else from his circle, and maybe more specifically, not anybody else from his family, does that let you know that they're probably not going to be criminally charged, that they're not implicated in what Combs is accused of doing, or is it too early to say and something could change?
It's way too early to say, and every day in the federal criminal system, the U.S. Attorney's Office issues superseding indictments by going back in front of the grand jury with additional information and just adding on to the initial indictment. So no, I would say it's way too early to say at this point whether or not anybody in his family, anybody in his circle are going to be charged criminally with some type of a superseding indictment in this situation.
The reason I ask is because Christian Combs, as we were talking about, is facing his own legal scrutiny. On April 4th, this was days after the simultaneous raids at Combs' homes in Los Angeles and Miami, a woman named Grace O'Markey filed a civil lawsuit against Christian Combs. And according to that civil complaint, O'Markey, 25 years old at the time, says that she worked as a steward on the yacht that Combs had rented, and she was in charge of providing food and drinks for a 12-hour period. This was the yacht that Sean Combs had rented. And she believes that the alcohol on that yacht had been laced with drugs, because she says women would have one drink and then almost immediately pass out or start falling over, which is kind of consistent with what the allegations are in Sean Combs' criminal indictment. But O'Markey says that Christian Combs had been staying at a villa on the shore, but then would come onto the yachts in the evenings to party. And on December 28th, 2022, Christian, according to her, arrives very intoxicated and pressured O'Markey to take shots of tequila. She claims that she did, and then, according to her, Christian allegedly tried to get her to drink more in the yacht's makeshift recording studio. O'Markey alleges that Christian kissed her neck and face as he groped her legs, breasts, and private areas. Markey reportedly told Christian, quote, "Excuse me, you don't touch my legs like that. I'll move my legs where I want to. If I want to do this, then I will. You don't touch my legs like that." Now, this alleged assault was reportedly witnessed by Rodney Little Rod Jones, a music producer who accompanied Combs basically everywhere for a year while they worked on his latest album, Love Off the Grid. And in his own sexual assault separate lawsuit, Jones says he was in the recording studio when Christian and O'Markey were there and might have even had some of the audio from that interaction recorded. So O'Markey says that she tried to go back to her work, but Christian found her again, wanted her to find him a place to sleep for the night. So she took him to the cinema room of the yacht, and that is when she claims Christian stopped her from leaving, groped her, took off all of his clothes, and tried to force her to perform oral sex on him. This is the allegation. So O'Markey's civil lawsuit accuses Christian of assault, battery, sexual assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Sean Combs is also named as a defendant. He's accused of aiding and abetting Christian's behavior, as well as having premises liability because he was the leaseholder of the yacht. And premises liability means that you have a duty to keep people on your property safe from injuries. She's seeking unspecified damages in the suit. So let me go back to you, Fortunato, about this. Do you think that this allegation, this incident, Grace O'Markey, this will be part of the criminal case? Because so much of the criminal case facing Combs, we don't know the details. A lot of it is general. Do you think that this is going to make its way into that case?
Yes, it's certainly possible. And I would love to know if law enforcement was ever given this information before a lawsuit was filed. If I'm defending Christian, the first thing I say is, why did you wait so long to make an allegation in this civil lawsuit? Did you wait and did you see what happened with the father, with the indictment, with the allegations, and then just try and pile on to try and get yourself a payday? That would be my position.
So just to be clear, this became out before the arrest indictment, but it came out after the civil lawsuits, after the raid. So there was the idea that we knew he was probably going to be charged, but he hadn't been charged yet.
Yeah, I think it was all part of as things were kind of percolating. Civil cases against him, and we saw what those allegations were, kind of what the details of those allegations were. And my question would be to the plaintiff in this case, why did you wait so long? Why didn't you report it right away? And did they report it to law enforcement? That to me is crucial, because if they reported this to law enforcement and law enforcement kind of poo-pooed it and thought there were credibility issues there, I think that's going to, severely hamper the plaintiff's case moving forward. But maybe law enforcement has had this and they've been sitting on it, and they're going to make it part of this whole federal indictment. Then that's where the problems arise.
I also think it's interesting how they structured the case. Not every incident of physical violence or sexual assault is a part of the criminal case. It's more about the freak-offs. It's more about these very specific alleged sexual episodes. And while they allege that basically Combs engaged in a campaign of abuse of women, where the focus remains is the freak-offs. This is not necessarily a freak-off. It's not. So it makes me wonder how broad their case will be or can be. They're federal prosecutors. They're not state prosecutors. They're not charging sexual battery or sexual assault, but they can include that as part of a larger racketeering case, that Combs was operating a criminal organization that engaged in a number of different crimes: sexual assault, kidnapping, sexual, obstruction of justice, arson. So again, I think that part about it is interesting too. Can they, or even will they? What's their ability to include this?
Well, they can either charge it specifically as a separate act under the racketeering portion of the indictment, or they could introduce it as other crimes evidence that Sean Combs was creating this environment where women were being sexually assaulted by people, including his son. Now, right now, his son's not charged in this federal indictment, so they'd have to show that Sean Combs was somehow responsible criminally for what happened with this woman, the sexual assault with this woman. So there's two ways they could do it. They could charge it as a predicate act, or they could introduce it pre-trial as some other crimes evidence of criminal activity.
Interesting. And just generally speaking about this lawsuit that Christian Combs faces, Any takeaways from it in terms of, I mean, you mentioned it before about her timing of filing the lawsuit, but in terms of its strength, in terms of the idea that Rodney Little Rod Jones might be a corroborating witness to this alleged assault, in terms of the strength of the actual lawsuit, what do you take away from it?
Well, a lot of it is going to hinge on, what I've seen, that there may be potential audio of some of her discussions with Christian. So if they are authentic, that certainly makes her case a lot stronger. But
Right.
Rodney's tainted. I think he has his own lawsuit that he's filed against Sean Combs. So if there's some question about the authenticity of this audio of the woman making complaints in real time while it's happening, that's where this case is going to hinge. I mean, if you have an expert from the defense come in and say, "Hey, that's not her voice. That's been tinkered with. The audio has been tinkered with." That's going to be a positive for the defense. But if that comes in as an authentic audio recording of her in real time making complaints about what Christian is doing, I think he's going to have a problem defending this thing.
It's a really good point. Look, I'm interested to see where all these cases progress and if they have an effect on the criminal case. We're still in the early stages. I know it's been 2 weeks now, but look, it's still shocking to see the situation that he finds himself in and where it might go. Fortunato Perri, thank you so much for coming on. Great seeing you. Really appreciate you taking the time, sir.
My pleasure, Jesse. Anytime.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.